There's a slab of liver in a cold pan in front of me right now, dark and rich and glistening, and a man could look at that and think he just found the thing that saves his life. And in the warm months, he'd be right. But there's a kind of meat out here that does the exact opposite of what it promises. It looks like salvation. It looks like the richest, most generous gift the country can hand a starving man. And it has put more lean, desperate, half-frozen men in the ground in a single afternoon than the cold ever managed in a week. I know how that sounds. The cold is the thing everybody fears. The cold is the loud thing, the obvious thing, the thing that gets all the credit out here. But the loud thing is rarely what kills you. And this one kills quick. Not over the long, slow nights the way the snow does, but in hours. A man can be walking and talking and full of hope at noon and laid flat on his back by dark, retching and reeling and wondering what in God's name went wrong, when all he did was eat the one thing that looked like it would keep him alive. Here's the part that ought to stop you cold. The fix for it is free. It costs nothing but the knowing. And it's a piece of knowing that nearly went into the ground with the men who carried it, because the same trail food that killed them is the very thing folks today would tell you is the healthiest, leanest, most virtuous thing you could put in your body. So stay with me, because once you see this, you will never look at a fresh kill the same way again. Let me tell you who I am first, so you understand I'm not guessing at any of this. I've run a trap line alone in country you couldn't walk off of if your life depended on it, and more than one winter it did. I've eaten whatever I caught and gone hungry, the nights I caught nothing. The men who taught me didn't read this in any book. They learned it the hard way, the way the woods teach everything, which is by burying the men who got it wrong. And the lesson I'm about to hand you is one of the oldest and the strangest they ever passed down, because it goes against every instinct a hungry man has. Now hold tight to this next part, because it's the whole spine of the story, and I'm going to plant it here and come back to it. The men who died of this weren't out of food. They had just made a kill. They had meat in their hands and hope in their chest. They ate the part of the animal that any sensible man would tell you is the best part, the richest part, the part packed with everything a starving body screams for, and it killed them faster than going without would have. I'm going to show you exactly how that happens, but not yet. Keep it in the back of your mind because it matters more than anything else I'll say. If you're getting something out of this already, do me one small kindness and tap that subscribe button right now and like this video while you're at it. It costs you nothing, the same as the knowing I'm handing you, and it tells me to keep digging these old ways up before they're gone for good. So let's start with the why, because if this next piece doesn't land, none of the rest will keep you alive. To understand it, you have to understand the animal and the season together. Late winter is the killing time. By February, by March, every wild thing out there has burned through the fat it packed on in the fall. The deer go gaunt, the rabbits turn to string and bone, and here is the cruel arithmetic of it. When the fat is gone from the muscle, the animal still carries its richest stores in one place. The liver. The body of the beast may be lean as a fence rail, but that organ stays dense and dark and loaded. And a starving man who's been chewing on nothing but stringy lean meat for days, a man whose body is howling for something rich, will look at that liver and think he's been handed a miracle. Here's where most folks go wrong, so lean in close. Most people carry the belief that the organ is always the prize. And in the last script I told you the organs are treasure, that the liver and the marrow are worth more than all the lean muscle put together, and that is true. But there is one exception the old hands feared more than they feared an empty pot, and it comes down to which animal that liver came from. Because the predators, the meat-eaters, the lean, hungry hunters of the deep country carry something in their livers that a deer or a rabbit never will. Their bodies store a thing the body needs in tiny amounts and cannot survive in flood. And that liver, the liver of the bear, the liver of the seal, the liver of the husky dog a desperate man might butcher when there was nothing else, holds that thing in a dose so heavy it turns the medicine into the poison. That's the trap, baited and set. The leanest, hungriest country produces the leanest predators, and the leanest predators are exactly the ones a starving man is most likely to fall back on when the easy game is gone. So the lost man, the man whose supplies ran dry, does the natural and obvious thing that feels exactly like survival. He eats the richest part of the only animal he could catch, and every bite of that rich, dark, generous-looking organ is carrying a load his body was never built to clear. Now, here's the hard truth underneath it. Your body needs that thing the liver is flooded with. In a small, steady trickle, it keeps your eyes sharp and your skin whole and your bones sound. But your body has no good way to throw out the excess. It can't sweat it out fast. It can't pass it off quick the way it does with other things. It just stacks up, and the stacking happens in hours, not days. Within a few hours of a big feed of that wrong liver, a man's head starts to pound like a drum. His stomach turns, his vision swims, the skin on his face and his hands and his scalp begins to itch and burn, and within a day or two it starts peeling away in sheets like he's been scalded. His guts seize. He grows drowsy and dizzy and sick to the very core. And a man already worn down to the bone by cold and hunger, a man with nothing left in the tank, doesn't always come back from a blow like that. The thing that was supposed to be his richest meal becomes the thing that finishes the job the winter started. Now circle back to what I told you to hold on to, that riddle of the full man dying from his best meal. Here's the whole answer laid plain. The richness that looked like salvation was the very thing that overwhelmed him. The organ that would have saved his life if it came from a deer became a dose of poison because it came from a predator. The starving man's instinct to seek out the richest food he can find and eat as much of it as his stomach will hold is the exact instinct that kills him in this one case. His own good sense turned against him. So here's the trick, and I'll hand it to you in layers, the same way it was handed to me. The first layer flips your whole head around. You judge the liver by the animal it came from, not by how rich it looks. The grass-eaters, the deer, the rabbit, the caribou, their livers are safe and good and worth eating first. The meat-eaters, the bear, the big cats, the seals, the dogs, their livers you treat with a long arm and a wary eye. The richer and the more inviting that dark organ looks sitting there in the snow, the more careful you'd better be about where it came from. The second layer is the one almost everybody gets backward. When you're not certain, you don't gorge. A starving man's whole body is begging him to eat all of it, fast, because rich food is rare and the hunger is loud. But the old hands knew that with the wrong liver, the size of the dose is the whole danger. A few bites of a questionable organ might pass through a man with no more than a bad afternoon. A full belly of it can put him down for good. So when in doubt, you eat little and slow, and you watch your own body for the first warnings, the ache behind the eyes, the turning stomach. And if it comes, you stop and you wait it out before it stacks any higher. Stop a second, because this is the part of the channel that keeps it alive. If these old ways are worth something to you, hit that like button and subscribe, and tap the little bell so the notifications come through. Because the platform buries this kind of thing unless folks like you tell it not to. That bell is the only way you'll know when the next one drops. The third layer feels almost like cheating once you learn it. The native hunters, the people who'd lived on this land 1,000 winters running, almost never died this way. And it wasn't luck. They knew exactly which livers to leave in the snow. They'd take down a great bear and feed its liver to no one, not even the dogs in some camps, because they'd watched what it did. They knew by hard inheritance the same thing the newcomers had to learn by dying. The trappers and the explorers and the settlers copied the killing and skipped the wisdom. They learned how to hunt the same animals the native people hunted, but never bothered to learn how to eat them, which part to prize and which part to bury. That one missing piece of knowing marks the whole difference between a man who walks home come spring and a man who doesn't. The fourth layer is the one nobody sees coming. The danger isn't only in what you eat fresh off a kill, it's in what desperation does to a man's judgment. A well-fed man would never touch the liver of a sick-looking predator. But a starving man, a man 3 days into nothing, a man whose mind has gone narrow and frantic with hunger, will eat things he'd have laughed at a week before. The hunger itself is part of the killer here. It strips away the caution that would have saved him. So the rule the old hands lived by was to make the decision before the hunger ever got that loud. You decide what you will and won't eat while your head is still clear. And you hold that line when your belly starts screaming, because a starving man cannot be trusted to choose well in the moment. Now you might be wondering why nobody ever told you this, why it isn't plain common knowledge, and the answer is the quiet kind. It comes down to money and time. A piece of survival wisdom only stays alive as long as people need it. The day the wagon road reached the valley, the day a man could buy his meat in tidy cuts at a store with no organ and no choice and no danger attached, the knowing started to fade. Nobody pays to remember a rule they'll never use. And then it got worse. The modern food trade took the broad old truth, that the organs and the rich dark meats are the treasure, and they sell you that now as health, lean and rich and good for you, without ever once mentioning the one exception that killed men in hours. There's no money in the warning. There's only money in the easy version. It's not a cover-up. It's just the quiet arithmetic of what sells. And the careful old truth got crowded out because there wasn't a dollar in keeping it whole. Let me be straight with you now, the way I'd want a man to be straight with me, because I'd rather you trust me than be impressed by me. This is not going to happen to most of you, and I won't pretend otherwise. You are not going to be butchering a bear's liver in a starving camp this winter, not with a kitchen down the hall and a road out front. To actually die of this, you'd have to be already worn to the bone and forced back on the wrong animal with nothing else in reach, the way a lost hunter or a stranded traveler might end up, and not the way you're sitting comfortable right now. I won't tell you it's coming for you, but I'll tell you that every man it ever came for felt just as safe as you do, right up until he made a kill and ate the best part of it. And I won't skip the one hard fact that proves I'm not spinning you a campfire tale, because this is documented better than almost any old ways lesson I know. The Arctic explorers wrote it down plain. Men who lived among the northern hunters recorded that the people there would never eat the liver of the great white bear, and warned in their own journals that those who did fell gravely ill within hours, with splitting heads and peeling skin and a sickness that laid the strongest men flat. Whole expeditions suffered for ignoring it. When men who walked that country with their own boots write the same warning down in plain ink, you can take that one straight to the bank. We're nearly through, and if you've stayed with me this far, you already know what to do. Tap subscribe, give this one a like, and turn on that bell, because the next lesson is one of the strangest I've got, and you won't want to miss it. So here's how you carry all of this, not as panic, but as a plain way of doing things. Judge the liver by the animal, never by how rich it looks. The grass eaters you can trust, the meat eaters you treat with care. When you're unsure, you eat little and slow and you watch yourself for the warnings. And you make your choices before the hunger turns your good sense against you. None of it costs a thing. And that's the part I love most, because the whole secret was sitting right there in the open the entire time, in knowing which gift to take and which to leave in the snow. Maybe that's the real lesson. The one bigger than livers and bigger than winter. Those men didn't die because the country was cruel. The country was only ever just the country. They died because they were certain. Certain that rich meant good. Certain that the best part of the animal could never turn on them. Certain they already knew the one thing they didn't know at all. The wilderness never kills the humble man half as fast as it kills the sure one. The old hands feared their own certainty more than they ever feared the cold, and that's a thing I'd hand down to you ahead of any trick. So tell me down in the comments, what's the one piece of food wisdom your own people carried that the rest of us have plain forgotten? The thing your grandmother knew about which part to eat and which part to throw, that nobody bothered to write down. Because I want to hear it. And before you go, here's what's been gnawing at me to tell you next. I've talked to you about the food that fools you. Next time, I'm going to hand you one about water, an old rule that runs dead against common sense, the kind where the clearer and prettier and more inviting that mountain stream looks, the more likely it is to lay you flat for a week. And I'll show you why, along with what the old hands watched for instead. Until then, take care of your fire, and don't ever trust a rich meal to tell you the truth.